Computer. Okay. Um, I'm not sure this is where we left off, but it's where my brain left off. So I guess that's that should be that should be good enough. If you remember, he started off the book. Um, he started off the first chapter rather by talking about our first job is to figure out what our purpose in the world is. Okay, and so he said the purpose of our world of our being in the world is in order for us to get pleasure in the creator and dveikut, or cleaving, a word which I said I would not translate because it's very difficult to translate. It could mean to be cleaving to God, to be close to God, to be in union with God. Um, we'll have to wait until he tells us what he thinks dveikut means. But he introduces it as the goal of life. And he says we were put into this world. We were put into this world as a preparation for the achievement of that goal of life, which is really going to be achieved not in this world, but in the world to come. So this world is a preparatory is the place of preparation for that ultimate, right, for that ultimate intimacy, dveikut with God. Okay, so he's talking to us about the relationship between us and the world. So he says, if you look more deeply into the matter, you will see the world was created for man's use. In truth, man is at the center of a great balance. If he is pulled after the world and drawn further from his creator, he is damaged and he damages the world with him. If if he rules over himself and unites himself with his creator and uses the world only to aid him in the service of his creator, he is uplifted and the world itself is uplifted with him. So there is in this a great power that's given to to human beings, right? This incredible power. I think I mentioned last time that while the while Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto was forbidden from teaching Kabbalah, every once in a while you get like a Kabbalistic idea kind of slid into the text um, on the sly. And this is, I think, one of them, right? This idea that we have an impact not just on ourselves, but an impact on the world around us. You don't need Kabbalah to teach you that. I mean, it's observable. It's observable in life that we have an impact on the world around us. So it says you're here you are in this world and being in this world, um, and which he described before as kind of a battlefield, right? Um, always puts us in this precarious position where we can either like move towards the goal that he described before, we could move away from it. So for all creatures are greatly uplifted when they serve the whole man who is sanctified with the holiness of the Blessed One. Remember, he talked about this idea of being an Adam Shalem, being a complete human being, right? Of course, we're all human beings, right? But we're not necessarily complete. Who is sanctified with the Holy Spirit. It is our sages of blessed memory have said in relation to the light that the Holy One, blessed be He, stored away for the righteous. When the Holy One, blessed be He, saw the light that He had stored away for the righteous, He rejoiced. As it is said, the light of the righteous rejoices. So that there's this there's this idea that the person that the actualized person, the Adam Shalem, the complete person, is really beloved is really beloved in this world and beyond, and that the world was really created to give us the opportunity to be able to achieve that. And there's this beautiful image that God hides some of His light, right, for the righteous in the world to come. It's like there's a called the Or Haganuz, the light that's hidden, and that though we may not see that light in this world, we'll be able to see that light in the world to come. And this is a kind of this shows how precious, right, a righteous person is in this world. And he says, in relation to the stones of the place that Yaakov took and put around his head. They said, and this is from the Talmud, Rabbi Yitzhak said, this teaches that they, the stones, gathered themselves in one spot, each one saying, let the righteous one lay his head upon me. Right? It's a beautiful, beautiful story that when uh, Yaakov was, he went to lay down, and it says that he had a pile of stones beneath his head. And so the Midrash says that why do you have a pile of stones? Why don't you just have one big stone under his head? Because all the stones gathered together and said, me first, right? Because for a physical object to be used by a righteous person is an honor, right? It's using a person who's using the world, using the creation, right, for the service of the creator. The creation itself, right, wants to be used. So your computer is jumping up and down for joy right now and going, oh my goodness, I'm being used to learn Mesilat Yesharim. Oh my goodness, this is amazing. So, you can pet your computer and say, I'm glad you're happy. I'm glad you're happy. So Rabbi Yitzhak said this teaches, oh yes. Then it says, our sages of blessed memory drew our attention to this principle in Midrash Kohelet. See, on the verse, see the work of God. When the Holy One, blessed be He, created Adam, He took him and caused him to pass before all the trees in the garden. And he said to them, see how beautiful and praiseworthy are my works and all that I have created. I've created for your sake. Take heed that you not damage and destroy my world. So God is giving mankind a tour of the world and saying, look, all of this was created for you. All of this was created for you. All these trees, all this beauty, everything was created for you. Don't mess it up, right? Don't mess it up. It's a big, it's a big thing. So the world is created for our benefit. So we can feel a little bit of a tension building here, right? Wait a second. So you just told me this world is a you just told me this world is a battlefield, and there are all these things which are going to be drawing me away from the true purpose of life. And yet you're telling me that the world was also created for our benefit, right? So there is that tension, right? That is a real thing. And so it becomes a matter of choice. That word again, it becomes a matter of choice in how we use the world. So to summarize, man was created not for his station in this world, but for his station in the world to come. It is only that his station in this world is a means towards his station in the world to come. That is the ultimate goal, right? So while it's true that the most important thing is what's going to be in the world to come, the most important thing is in Muslim terms, your akhira, right? Your future, right? Your olam haba. He says, but still, that's only built here. The only place where you have the opportunity to create that olam haba, to create that future is here, and so your responsibility is here. So it is only that the station of the world is means toward the station of the world come. Okay, the accounts for numerous statements of our sages of blessed memory, all in a similar vein, likening this world to a place, a time of preparation. The next world is a place been set aside for rest and for eating of what was already been prepared. This is their intent in saying the world is similar to a corridor, right? I mentioned that analogy before. And today for their performance, and tomorrow to receive their reward. So today you work, and tomorrow you get the benefit. He who exert himself on Friday will eat on Shabbat. So we're in the world of work, and then the world to come is the world Shekula Shabbat, the world which is completely Shabbat, a world of rest and a world of rest and peace. And so we work in this world for the peace of the next world. Um, this world is like the shore, and the world to come like the sea, and many other statements. Now, in truth, no reasoning being can believe that the purpose of man's creation relates to his station in this world. So if you really think about it, right, he says you cannot believe that your ultimate purpose is going to be in this world. Why? Why is that? For what is man's life in this world? Who is truly happy and content in this world? So if it were really possible, right? If it were really possible for somebody to be truly content in this world, then maybe we could think that, okay, this is it, right? Your everything that you could possibly achieve has got to be in this world. But we know, we observe um, that there are people who would appear to be extremely successful by the world standards, and they're miserable, right? We know their miseries now, especially because we have social media. We get to see their miseries first up, right? They're um, and the nature of the human relationship to material things is that when whatever we have, we always want more. You know, as the Talmud says, no person dies with 50% of their desires fulfilled, right? Because every time you get what you desire, you start desiring something else, right? So we have this never-ending desire. So um, we really don't, we really don't see that people are getting this great happiness in this world, and says the days of our life are 70 years, and if exceedingly vigorous, 80 years, and their persistence is but labor and foolishness. Right, most of us live 70 years. If you're lucky, you can push through to 80 years. Um, and with all the misery that goes with us and all the stupidity goes with it, how many different kinds of suffering and sicknesses and pains and burdens. Um, right, Lainey? Just, I, I mean, just, uh, you know, you reach a certain point and it's just one thing after another. If you reach a certain age, all of a sudden it's just one thing after another.
The best thing I was told was by an outreach mental health worker who said, I don't know anybody who has three serious things wrong with them at the same time who isn't miserable.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So this world is is full of misery. If you had told me that when I was 21 years old, I think I didn't relate to this teaching at all. Actually, that's when I first read this book. I wasn't 21. I was 20, I want to say 27, and still maybe 25, 26, 27. And I just didn't get it at all because how could that be? And after all this, death. No one in 1,000 is found to be to whom the world has yielded a superabundance of gratifications and true contentment. Right? There's not that many people. There are some people who really do have pretty happy lives, not that many of them. And even such a one, though he attained to the age of 100 years old, passes and vanishes from the world. Right? Sooner or later, okay, even if you live to 100 years old and everything is great, eventually you're gonna die. So, furthermore, if man has been created solely for the sake of this world, he would have had no need of being inspired with a soul so precious and exalted to be greater than the angels themselves. Especially so that desire derives no satisfaction whatsoever from all the pleasures of this world. There is a part of us, right? We all, I think everybody, I mean, most everybody at some point, and uh, recognizes that there's a part of you that is you have a soul, you have a spiritual side that is not satisfied with all of these things, right? I think, I think some people experience that different ways. I think some people don't know that they're experiencing it, right? So you get the kind of midlife crisis, right? Where you think that the midlife crisis is that you just don't have the right stuff, right? It's not, you don't realize that stuff is not filling you up, that stuff is not giving you what your soul needs, right? So you think, okay, I just have the wrong stuff, so I just need to get better stuff, and I'm gonna feel better, but I don't think it ever works. So we all experience, we have this soul, and the soul is restless. It's not satisfied by these things in the world. It wants something else. It yearns for it yearns for something else, right? We may not even be able to understand exactly what that something else is. Sometimes it's meaning, sometimes it's love, sometimes it's for a sense of awe. It could be for we could have lots of different ways and directions that goes, but we know that nothing in this world is satisfying it. Uh, so this is what our sages of blessed memory teach in the Midrash, and also the soul will not be filled. What is this analogous to? This is one of my favorite. This is one of my favorite analogies. I have to admit. Um, it says, "What is this like? This is like the case of a city dweller who married a princess. Um, if he brought her to all the world, brought her all the world possessed, it would mean nothing to her by virtue of being a king's daughter." Right? So you imagine. I once wrote a story about this. But imagine, you had um, a let's say uh, a wealthy village guy, right? A guy who lives in a village or a small hamlet, and he marries a princess, and he brings the princess, and the princess sees where she's living, right? She's got a straw mattress and all this stuff, and dirt floor. He could start building and building and building and building and building, and he could do his very best to make it as beautiful as possible. But because she's a princess, right? And because her natural place of living is in the palace, really nothing that he does is going to be enough. It's never going to make her feel at home. And so the soul, because the soul, again, he's being a little bit Kabbalistic, right? In Kabbalah, the soul comes from the expression, God's expression as Malchut, as kingship. I don't want to get into all that. Um, but the princess, right? So this princess, is never going to be comfortable in this world. So it is with the soul. If it were to be brought all the delights of the world, there would be nothing to it in view of its pertaining to the higher elements, because the nature of the soul is to want a higher state of being. And you can give it all the delights you want. I just discovered rose petal Turkish delight. You could give it all the rose petal Turkish delight in the world, and it still wouldn't be enough. As it says in Pirkei Avot, against your will were you created, against your will were you born. For the soul has no love at all for this world, right? The soul, the image here is that the soul is forced into the world, right? It doesn't necessarily want to come into this world, it's forced into the world. It doesn't have any love for the world. On the contrary, it despises it. The Creator, blessed be his name, certainly would never have created something for an end which ran contrary to its nature and which it despised. So the ultimate purpose of the soul can't be to end up here. Okay? It can't be just to be in this world. This goes, by the way, takes us to an this is a tangent. Okay, I should say when I'm doing a tangent. So it takes us back to an interesting question about the resurrection of the dead. So um, um, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, the Maimonides, he says that um, when that in the end times, there will be a time when there is a resurrection of the dead, and when we will live in perfected human bodies, but then we will revert to a purely spiritual state. So the ultimate end will be a perfectly spiritual state. And he says, why is that? He says, because it wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't be fair. If people had spent their entire life trying to connect to spirituality, how is it fair that you're going to take those people and force them to be physical again, right? That soul earned its place, right, in the spiritual realm, and it will end up in the spiritual realm. So the Ramban, who was Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, so in the next generation in northern Spain, he took a look at this and he said, well, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense. If God wanted if God wanted a spiritual world, he would have created a spiritual world, right? He has angels and all that. He says, but he created this world. So obviously, a material world, a physical world, and the entire physical universe obviously is part of his plan. So the goal can't be to have something spiritual because before creation, of course, there was something spiritual. So the whole purpose of the creation has to be for there to be a perfect melding between the spiritual and the physical. And so he says that that in the end, what we will have is we will have a physical existence which is also completely spiritual. It will be both, but will still be physical. Um, so it can't be. It would seem to say here um, that it can't. We can't have a world which was created where we put the soul into this world to deal with all this stuff, in which that soul is not going to have the opportunity to experience what it truly loves, which is the spiritual state. So man was created then for the sake of his station in the world to come. Therefore, this soul was placed in him, for it befits the soul to serve God, and through it man may be rewarded in his place and in his time. And rather than the world being despicable to the soul, it is to be, on the contrary, to be loved and desired by it. This is self-evident. So we're not supposed to hate the world, right? This is our means, right? This is the place. This is the place where we can achieve our um, um, our holy place, right? This is the place where we can achieve. What is this says by Kalen here? What does she say here from Hillman? Soul is always tethered to life in the world. It can be separated from it. Soul is always in the thick of things, in the repressed, in the shadow, in the messes of life, in illness and the pain and confusions of love. That's beautiful. That's really beautiful.
James Hillman is very beautiful.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. That's really beautiful. And so the soul doesn't hate this world. The soul isn't supposed to despise the world because this world is the means by which it achieves its station in the world to come. And remember, right? God showed us the garden, right? He showed us the garden and said, this is all for you. So all of this is for your is the place and the means by which you are going to achieve this dveikut, this intimacy with God. So after recognizing this, we will immediately appreciate the greatness of the obligation that the mitzvot, that the commandments place upon us, and the preciousness of the divine service which lies in our hands. For these are the means which bring us to true perfection, a state which without them is unattainable. So if we didn't have these means of using this world, right, which is really what the commandments are, right? They're ways of using this world and using ourselves, right? We are our bodies, right? Our bodies and our emotions and the things which are the garments of the soul, so to speak, right? The things that enclose the soul, those all of those things are things that are used in our getting closer to God. And if we didn't have them, we wouldn't be able to do that. And so these commandments, these instructions. It's interesting that the Zohar Kadosh, one of the great, like the classic book of Jewish mysticism, says now two things. One is that the word mitzvah, I mentioned this before, is related to the word savta or connection. It's not just something which is commanded, but something which forges a connection between you and God, and um, and also that the commandments are also etzot, are also pieces of advice, right? They're for your good, right? There's something which is for your good, right? They're not just, we shouldn't just think of them as rules, right? That's a very primitive way of understanding God's commandments, is to understand them as orders or rules, but they are practices which are designed to bring us closer, to bring us closer, and to improve us, right? To improve us. They're like advice to improve us. So for these, it means to bring to perfection a state without them is unattainable. It is understood, however, that the attainment of a goal results only from a consolidation of all the available means employable towards its attainment, that the nature of a result is determined by the effectiveness and manner of employment of the means utilized toward its achievement, and that the slightest differentiation, I'm going to explain this, and the slightest differentiation in the means will very noticeably affect the result in which you give rise to the fruition of the aforementioned consolidation. This is ze barur. This is clear. Well, that sentence, it took me, I picked through the Hebrew of that sentence this morning, so I got it. What he's saying is that the way you do something, right? The way you do something is going to affect the outcome. Okay? What the outcome of something depends on what you put into it. So I sort of thought about it like as baking, something which I can't do because I'm not disciplined enough to do it. But if you are a baker, right, you know that you have to follow the steps exactly, right? Unless you're like a super baker in which you would understand how to mess with it. But for most of us, okay, you have to do the right things, you have to do the right things at the right time. And if you don't do the right things at the right time, you're going to get a very different outcome. You're going to get something that doesn't really look like a cake. It doesn't look like a pie. It doesn't look like a bread. So here he says it. So therefore, it becomes very clear to you why you have to be careful, right? Why you have to be careful. So it's really, if we understand the weight that these things have, then we also understand that we have to be really careful about how we perform them. So he says it's obvious then that we must be extremely exacting in relation to the commandments and the service of God, just as the weighers of gold and pearls are exacting because of their preciousness of these commodities, for their fruits result in true perfection and eternal wealth of that which is that which nothing is more precious. Okay, so because this is so precious, right? The person who's dealing with diamonds, although I must say I've seen it. It is kind of amazing to watch. Um, if you've ever been to a diamond market, I went in Amsterdam, and I've also seen in Tel Aviv, and they just kind of dump out these. They have these little they have these little uh, uh, paper envelopes, and they just kind of dump out these diamonds, and they look very cavalier with these diamonds in spite of how expensive they are. But theoretically speaking, a person should be very careful, right? You have something of great value, you treat it with incredible care. And since you know that these commandments, that these practices, that these things are going to are have such an important result and such great reward, we're going to be very, 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 very careful with them. We thus derive that the essence of man's existence in this world is solely the fulfilling of mitzvot, the serving of God, and the withstanding of trials. That the world's pleasures should serve only the purpose of aiding and assisting him by way of providing him with the contentment and peace of mind requisite for the freeing of his heart for the service which devolves upon him. So while we have to put up with suffering, just an important point, while we have to put up with suffering, and that's really part of it, okay? Part of the service of God is learning to put up with suffering because suffering is absolutely inevitable. I'm sorry to tell you. Um, on the other hand, we should be seeking a certain amount of serenity and yeshuv hadat, of peace of mind in this world, because in order to do these things, right? In order to do the commandments, in order to serve God, right? We need a certain amount of peace in our lives, right? And we recognize that that is one of the conditions, right? So Maimonides, for example, says that a person should have um, uh, nice furnishings, good smells, and a pretty wife. He's talking to men, obviously. Okay, and a pretty wife. So why? Because these are things which make the mind feel good and happy, right? To see your, I'm not just pretty, but to have a nice spouse, right? You live with a nice person who you love, right? And you have a nice environment to be in, and it smells good because smell is, we call it the lachma di nishmata, the bread of the soul, right? Because all other forms of enjoyment, make you fat, right? If you eat something, right, it makes you fat. But you can smell all the great things you want all day long, and it never makes you fat. It never increases your physicality. So there's something very spiritual about smell. That's why we have incense and we have perfumes and Bahor and all these wonderful things. So, right, but the purpose of that is in order to serve God, right? We have to have a certain amount of beauty around us. We have to have a certain, you know, so we're not looking for a life of misery necessarily. Um, It's indeed fitting for every inclination be towards the Creator, may his name be blessed, that is every action, great or small, being motivated by no purpose other than that of drawing nearer to the Blessed One and breaking all the barriers, that is, all the earthly elements and their concomitants that stand between him and his possessor. Interesting, could call God his kone, his possessor. God is our bore and kone, is our creator and our possessor, right? The creator creates us, and the kone, the possessor, takes care of us on a daily basis. Um, so that we and he until he is pulled towards the blessed one, just as iron to a magnet, right? So that you are drawn, right? You are drawn to God. So that everything, ultimately, everything that you do, you want to, right? Ultimately, everything that you do, you want to be for the purpose of serving God. Now, you'll notice that this is, uh, we're in chapter one, right? We're in chapter one, and he's going to say that we can't get there right away. Okay, so if you go away from this today and you think, oh my goodness, I don't know how to do that. I mean, good, that's good because we're going to try to learn how to do that because nobody knows how to just do that, right? One of the problems with a lot of spiritual literature is it tells you, like, okay, just go do it. Okay, everything you do should be for the sake of God. Have a nice day. Okay, have a nice day. Be well. All right, and then you walk away and you, well, how do I do that? Like, what's that look like? Um, but he is going to tell us that we're not there yet. Anything that might possibly be a means to acquiring this closeness, he should pursue and clutch and not let go of. Anything which might be considered as a deterrent, he might flee from as a fire. As it says in the Psalms, Tehillim, my soul clings to you, your right hand sustains me. For a man enters the world only for this purpose, to achieve this closeness, by rescuing his soul from all the deterrents to it and all that detracts from it. Now, I'm going to get to the end here. After we have recognized the truth of this principle, it has become clear to us that we must investigate its details according to its stages from beginning to end, as they were arranged by Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair in the statement which has already been referred to in our introduction. Right? Now that we've set this goal, then we have to start thinking about how we're going to get there. And he already told us. He said this is something which is this is a staggered, staged, right, process. Okay, these stages are watchfulness, zeal, cleanliness, separation, purity, saintliness, humility, fear of sin, and holiness. And now, with the aid of heaven, we will explain them one by one. So now we're able to go, and to explain them one by one. And next week, I know you're excited, we begin with the trait of watchfulness, which actually, for me, is like is a really interesting one. Watchfulness or zihirut sometimes it can also mean uh, like zeal, or any case, we'll talk about it. Okay, so questions, thoughts, objections,
Why
feelings?
is it Kabbalistic thought to make a difference while you're on the earth? I think you mentioned something like that.
Yeah, so I think because I think he's implying, I mean, I think underneath there I think underneath there is the belief, um smelling food linked to gateway
No,
drug.
I know, I put that as a guess, but it's true. And so there was some study.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Um life is so life is so
Bird.
tragic, so tragic. Um So I think underneath that idea, or his presentation of the idea, is the idea that we have like this cosmic, that we have a cosmic significance. It's not just our lives, our world, which is at stake. Um, it's not just our world that's at stake, but that there's more at stake. But yeah, I mean, as I said, like you don't need the Kabbalah for that to make sense. That could also make sense just by observing the world. You know, you have an impact on the world around you. So,
What's
you
the
know.
negative connotation of that kind of thinking?
So the
That you don't get into the better world because you're not focused enough
well,
on.
no, the negative is that you could do bad, right? That you could
Oh, right.
you could screw up the cosmos, right?
Yes, right.
You could block up the cosmic plumbing.
Right. Oh,
That's actually the real problem. The real
I
problem
like
is
it.
that there
You
is a kind
crack the
of,
cosmic egg.
well, no, there's
No.
like this flow of divine, right? Of divine power and light into this world, and you can block it, right? So you don't want to block it. Uh,
Hmm.
so
I have something to say. If you guys got blasted out with some music at the beginning of this, you can blame it on the, I don't know if you did or not. That black and white cat stepped on my computer and somehow turned on a movie. I
oh
think
no, I
maybe
didn't hear
that I was
anything.
okay, I was still muted because it was weird because
Okay,
I was
well,
hearing dialogue. It took
My
me a couple
cats
of minutes to
do.
realize what was
Mhm.
happening because I was hearing dialogue and they were talking about a comet and a meteor hitting the Earth or something. I didn't
And the
realize it was a
cosmos.
soundtrack.
Wow.
I don't
That's
know. Okay.
that's an
Yeah,
acid
it was
trip.
a soundtrack. It was a soundtrack from something else, but it got cross. I fixed it, but good. It did. I must have been muted here, so it didn't blast into you.
Yeah,
But I was a
yeah,
little
I didn't
confused at
hear it.
first.
I didn't hear it. I'm sorry I missed that.
Okay, just fine.
Okay.
Yeah, the cat stepped on the keyboard.
Okay.
What
Well,
cat doesn't step on a keyboard? That's an
They all
that
do.
they love the
Yeah,
keyboard.
and
they love to step on the keyboard. They sleep on it. You know,
I I
that's
I
when
would never let my cat sleep in my sleep, but I don't have a cat, so I just want to thank everybody for coming, especially Amma Lale coming from UK, and I really appreciate it. I'm almost very quiet, but I'm so glad that you're here. I just forgot to say that. I'm really glad you're here. Any case,
Ariana will be back next week. She
oh
had
good.
surgery on something, but
Good.
she
I know
said
everybody has all their things. Feel free to invite your friends, invite your enemies, invite your frenemies, and the friends of your enemies, and
your frenemy should come.
your my friend. Oh God, you've seen some of them. They're amazing.
No, I haven't seen them. You mentioned them yesterday.
Yes,
Why
I
don't
have
your
some
frenemies
frenemies.
come?
Yes, we should get some of them to come. And
Well,
but really, everybody's welcome. Um, from wherever they may be, everybody's welcome. So I wish everybody a beautiful. I won't see anybody this weekend, so I have a beautiful. Well, I guess I'll see Rose maybe. Um, So everybody should have a beautiful weekend, and Jummah Mubarak and Ramadan Mubarak and Shabbat Shalom, and everybody should have a beautiful, peaceful Lord's Day, and be well.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.